Okay, there we go. That's the title of it. Changing Roles and Legacies in Archaeology. Obviously, there are key themes that I'm going to talk about in terms of what CBA does. We have a very long history, and that history began 80 years ago. If you want to see this in detail, because obviously the writing is very small on this screen, I would urge you to go to the Archaeology UK website. Because you can scroll along the history and you can pull out different elements of it. What we did with this slide was split it up into 4 separate sections because it seemed to typify what had happened in terms of CBA's role and what it was doing over those last 80 years. So in the first place, it was set up in 1944 as a safeguarding organisation. It was to safeguard Britain's archaeology. Obviously, we're coming towards the end of the Second World War. And so they came together because they realised that we needed to protect things. The first time it got any government grant aid was in 1949, and it began to play a key role in many of the archaeological developments, new legislation, different kinds of projects across that early period of time. So it was setting an understanding of what archaeology is and how it actually worked. And then there were advances. So in terms of what it was doing, Joe's going to talk about YAC, so I'm not going to try and say too much because I know that you've got 10 minutes on that. But YAC was established in 1972, which is coincidentally the same year that I went to see the Tutankhamun exhibition at the British Museum when I was 10. That was a really fundamental thing for me. I come from a council housing estate. I am grandchild 13 out of 21. I am the only one that went to university. We had really forward-thinking teachers that took us to places in an old rackety minibus from that estate, youth hosteling, and one of those trips happened to be the Tutankhamun exhibition. And I know what an impact that had on me. 3 children from that primary school class visit went to university to study archaeology. So you need to get them young, and that's what Joe's going to talk to you about. We need to get those opportunities for people like me whose life experience does not equate to going to museums, being able to pay to get into anything. We had no money, but our school gave me that inspiration. And coincidentally, YAC started the same year. I didn't know it existed. It wasn't doing the same things that it is today. And then in 1976, you see we've got on the timeline, we've got the British Archaeological Awards, which are now operated by CBA and administered by CBA under a new title of Archaeological Achievement Awards, and they happen on an annual basis. And then by 1993, we have British Archaeology magazine. So British Archaeology magazine has been in existence since that time. And if you see the shift from the left-hand side of the screen to the right-hand side of the screen, on the left, we're understanding about what we're doing, and we're establishing what is happening. And then there are projects that we feel potentially people would be drawn to. So this is us doing things for people rather than the very right-hand side of the screen, which is where we start to be proactive rather than reactive. We're not reacting to things that happen in the world. We're starting to make things happen instead. So that brings us to our vision. And I said while we were trying to work the PowerPoint that my ethos is essentially CBA's ethos. So I didn't really need to learn what the vision said. So to enable anyone to have the skills and opportunity to tell the stories of the people and places that connected to our world, that helps us to understand it and to make it a better, more inclusive place. I think we'd all agree that that is a really fundamental thing that we should all be doing. And then also in the mission, which is a slightly longer sentence, there's a very key phrase in there. We will also help people explore and create heritage that matters to them. And that is a completely different mindset. Because obviously we know how heritage matters to us. I have had a mantra for many years: archaeology is not just about archaeology. It doesn't just have archaeological outcomes. That came across very clearly. I'm looking the other side of the room this morning when I was listening to some of the National Trust papers. It's not just about the archaeology. There are other outcomes, which are the non-archaeological outcomes that we need to explore. And that's what museums have been doing. I come from a background where we started to experiment with co-creation and participatory practice probably more than 15 years ago when we were developing MShed in Bristol. So MShed is a museum about what makes Bristol, Bristol. We worked with community groups. We participated in a Paul Hamlin Foundation project called Our Museum. And Our Museum was not about a toolkit about how to co-create things. It was about organisational change. It was about changing the way you thought in order to be able to give up some of your control or your position of power in terms of what heritage means for people. Because actually, we want to know what people want from heritage. It flips it on its head. And it does take you a little while to get used to it, but actually we're going out and asking people now what they want, how they want to respond to it, how do they want to consume what we think is the most amazing subject, what is important to them. And so that thing about heritage matters to them is on a level that they choose to. And some of the other papers that I heard this morning were describing brilliant projects about how people have engaged with heritage in particular ways. They are what I would describe as one item on a menu of possibilities. They're only one item. There are lots of bits of things that are missing off that menu. Do you remember we never catered for vegans in the past? We do cater for vegans now. We've got to start catering for those people who are missing from that menu. So we've got a vision, we've got a mission. We've also got particular things that we do. And again, I'm going to refer you to the CBA website in this respect, because this is where you'll get the information. We do fundamental things. So we communicate with people. We do that in a variety of different ways. British Archaeology magazine, that's a print magazine as well as a digital magazine. You get that as part of your membership. It's published, I'm doing an advert here, by the way. Bi-monthly, it's got a circulation of over 6,000. We have a membership that we manage. We have 3,500 members, individual members. They weren't always individual members. That changed as part of that evolution. And we have affiliated members. So there are organisations that we work with as well. Really important things like the casework. So we are a national amenity society, which means that legally, we have to be consulted when any applications, planning applications come in that are for listed buildings or designated landscapes. Over 5,500 of those kinds of applications come in, maybe more in a year. They have to be prioritised. All the information about all of that casework is also coordinated on behalf of the other amenity societies by CBA. So there are 7 societies, and there is a joint committee of national amenity societies database, which means that we can all dig into it. I did the other day. I went to look at what was happening at the museum because my line managers hadn't told us. Discovered we're going to get some new sinks in the ladies' toilets, which are Edwardian, because I checked what was on that database. And you can see all the paperwork that actually goes with it. We also do a Young Archaeologists Club, and we do lots of work with young people. I know that there are at least 70, at the last count I know about, 70 YAC organisations that are organised by 500 plus volunteers. Bristol Museum hosts one of those. So we have the Bristol and Bath YAC section. It sounds like we've got a lot, but there's not blanket coverage across the UK with YAC. So if you've got an organisation that thinks you might be able to volunteer, speak to Joe afterwards. Because we've got gaps. Gloucestershire, my neighbouring county, no provision for young people aged between 8 and 16 as far as YAC is concerned. And yes, it does require volunteers to do it, but as we've heard, also from Debbie this morning and others in that session that I was in, what volunteers get out of actually doing things. And we can be those volunteers as well. We do a lot of work with other young people as well. So Festival of Archaeology. So the Festival of Archaeology is our flagship event. So we run other types of events. Over 500 organisations or events will sign up for this kind of thing. It's the sort of thing we do in the museum. We have a festival out to Blaise Castle. We literally have everything from reenactors to archaeologists handling units and commercial. We have all kinds of archaeology. So we don't limit ourselves to British archaeology there either. So the Egyptologists are allowed to come and have a table and talk to us about things. But the Festival of Archaeology is the flagship event. It's happening this year, last 2 weeks of July, 13th to the 28th of July. And the theme this year is archaeology and community. And that really is what we're talking about, is who are our communities, who are the audiences that we want to reach in terms of what we do with archaeology and the role that CBA has to play. So we'll move on and talk about these. So in 2022, CBA ran a survey and they talked to young people about what they wanted and how we could work with them, what they needed, and got lots of really valuable information, even about how meetings should be structured, how we would meet with them, what kinds of things they wanted to get out of it. 13% of the people that responded said it was about meeting people. It's not just about skills or training or learning about archaeology. It was about meeting other people. There was a social element to this. So we have a group of young advisors. You can read their biographies. There's a wide variety of people represented on the Youth Advisory Board. That came out of that survey, but they're also youth associates. So that means that there are other people that receive information. They might not want to step up to be a youth advisor, but they're still part of the process and their opinions matter. And they can also be provided with opportunities. One of the communications that was going on a part of the youth work, there are some amazing projects that are profiled. If you want some really good examples of things that have been done with community or young people, I would urge you to look at the website. Just thinking about the Young Archaeologists Club, there's an amazing project called Ordinary to Extraordinary on the website, which is well worth a read. But also, there's a whole series of letters that were written by people like you and me to this imaginary young archaeologist. And that went on for 24 months. And the last letter in that series was one that was written by a member of the Youth Advisory Board. And so rather than me praising what he said, because I cannot say this any better than he did, I'm going to read it to you. So if you just bear with me. There is a real belief that we, as young archaeologists, have the power to bring about positive and lasting change to archaeology, to the climate crisis, to political narratives and social beliefs, and that we have a lot to offer through our hard work, our imagination, and our ideas, and perhaps most importantly, through our passion. It's important that we take every opportunity that we can to engage in archaeology and that we make the most of those opportunities to inspire positive change. It's important that we form our own opinions, perhaps more important that we listen to those of the people around us, and this is a really key phrase, especially of those who face barriers that we might not know or understand. And in that light, it's important that we make opportunities as much as possible for other people. We should all have a hand in the reshaping of the future of archaeology and reimagining what it means to be an archaeologist. We need to think not just of those who dig or those who get paid to do archaeology, but also of those who occasionally join digs or those who like to watch documentaries or read books about archaeology. We need to think of all the people involved in archaeology and the value they bring. Without any one of these people, archaeology and heritage will suffer. And those of us who do wish to make archaeology a career, we need to fight this from the inside. We need to reimagine the industry and push it in the right direction every chance that we get. We need to fight outdated views about who can or should be an archaeologist. We need to break down barriers that have prevented so many from accessing archaeology, and we need to take every chance to listen to those around us so that we never forget what is so important, which is that to protect archaeology, we must first protect archaeologists. And finally, to everyone, we are the future of archaeology. We have the power and the potential to bring about positive change to archaeologists, to archaeology, to climate change, to the future of humankind. We must take every opportunity that we have to engage and inspire with archaeology. We are the future of archaeology, and we are all archaeologists, and the time is to act now. And I kind of feel like everybody should go away and read all of those letters, because that is how he responded to lots of people writing about what archaeology was. And fundamentally, that's what CBA is about. It's about enabling people to be inspired with this subject. And I've also been reading this book about neurodiversity recently. And it really struck me. If you want to read a really good book, it's by somebody called Hannah Critchlow. It's called Joined Up Thinking. And I cottoned onto it because I was listening to something on the radio, on Radio 4, and she started talking about collective intelligence. And that's what we need to be better at. Somebody asked a question this morning about whether there was one network that put all the opportunities for people to do things together. And the answer is CBA could be that network if we all use our collective intelligence to share that information and work together collaboratively. And the other thing that Hannah says is she talks about plasticity of brains and how our brains change as we get older, and it's easier to get entrenched in the way that you think. And that you should stop being the me and talk about the we, and that together we are collectively intelligent beyond our wildest dreams. So that's what made me think about what the young archaeologists were saying to us. There are other things that have changed over time. Obviously, opportunities that have been presented by new kinds of technology. We have a print magazine. We also have a digital version of it. And we have lots of engagements. Digital reach between October 2021 and September 2022, 6,447,740. They're big numbers that are involved. The only caveat that I would say is, I agree, digital has made some things accessible in ways that we've never been able to make it accessible before. But there can also be barriers. And I constantly point out to people, it's not about whether you can work a computer or understand software, it's actually whether you've got one in the first place. So digital poverty is an issue. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't be doing this kind of thing. We've got to provide another opportunity to do it. So there we go, we've got even bigger numbers. We have been surveying lots of other people. We know about our own membership. People referenced this morning, aging population in terms of what we're doing. New members and subscribers, it's been pretty static. So how do we get outside of those echo chambers that we're already talking to? And how can we make ourselves relevant to more than that estimated digital reach just there? And then the other thing that's been really important as well is the work that CBA has been doing to engage other units, societies, and what their problems are. So I also chair the Bristol and Gloucestershire Archaeological Society. I could have drawn that graph myself. We have an ageing membership, our volunteers. My secretary is 75. The treasurer is 78. One by one, the people who are volunteering to do this are no longer able to do that. And you can see the age profile of the membership. So how do we turn that around? How do we start bringing those younger people in? And the simple answer is CBA was very fortunate to have been awarded £249,000, nearly £250,000 of National Heritage Lottery funding to run this project called Reconnecting Archaeology, which addresses some of the issues that I've been talking about. When we talk about different perceptions, and we all come from different places, when Neil showed me this slide, he talks about there being a mountain. And I said to him, that's strange, because when I look at that slide, I can see a dinosaur on the left-hand side of the screen that looks like a brontosaurus. They died out because they failed to evolve. And sadly, we will die out if we fail to evolve. We will become less relevant. So this is the mountain that we have to climb. Reconnecting Archaeology is about audience research and development, not just for CBA, but for everybody else. It's about engaging young people. It's about creating that live network that somebody else referenced this morning. We want to provide sector training. We want to promote inclusivity and diversity, and also work towards a carbon net zero future. This is about fostering cross-sector working, using and creating that collective intelligence that I referenced. It's about shifting the perception of archaeology, and the CBA has got a role in transforming the sector, including through advocacy and funding. And if you want to talk to us about any of that, please do. But if you want to help us even more, and you are not a member of the CBA, this is what we'd like you to do. Or donate, or if you've got lots of money and you want to sponsor some things that we're doing, we're quite happy to talk to you about that as well. Thank you.